Okay, calm down.
You went to Colombia. What happened to you at
Yes.
Colombia
Okay, this is
when
good.
you actually went undercover as a Jew, I believe? We have a
Yeah,
photo
The
of what
Undercover
you
Jew.
did.
That's my new buddy comedy movie. You
What's
can
it
be my
called?
side. You can be my sidekick if you
Okay,
want.
I'll be the so you're the undercover Jew, yeah.
So
So this is
I first went to Princeton. So I first wore my kippah, which I actually got at. I was actually given at
oh,
the Labor Party Friends of Israel gala. The Labor Party is like hyper paranoid about not giving any sign whatsoever that they could be construed as being anti-Israel or anti-Semitic because of the whole Corbyn.
right. You're talking
You
about the
know,
British Labour Party.
yeah, the British Labour
Yeah,
Party. I was in England, right?
yeah.
So I had that. So I actually do have a kippah. So I went to so I if you notice, like when there was the peak of the hysteria over the campus protests, every little story about how like there was some kind of anti-Semitic incident or some kind of episode or whatever, you had to rely on like a secondhand account, and it was almost invariably somebody who is like aggressively pro-Israel going around trying to instigate, and then claiming if there were even the slightest reaction to what they were doing, that was this anti-Semitic, terror.
Right.
And so that they reported it that way. So as I mentioned, I'm often assumed to be Jewish, which again, one of the most profound honors of my life. So I figured I might as well use that to my journalistic advantage, put on my kippah, put on my big Star of David chain around my neck, and see if I get inundated with the anti-Semitic hatred that we're told is so ubiquitous at these protests, because that should do the trick, right? And of course, when I went to Princeton first and spent the whole day there, talked to people. I mean, the funniest part, I did a little thread about it, and it went amazingly viral actually, because Joyce Carol Oates loved it because she lives there. She lives in Princeton apparently, um, and like the storybook ending, or like a storybook little plot twist, was that on the day that I went to Princeton, it was a Saturday, and it was a kind of a cold, windy day, and because I'm not a practiced kippah wearer, a gust of wind came and blew it off my head, and
Oh,
a
no, yeah.
and a Princeton student in a keffiyeh,
Kafia.
he ran over, very politely grabbed it and said, "Oh, here you go, sir," and gave me back my.
Wow.
Where,
That's beautiful.
yeah, it was beautiful. Cool. So I wanted to sing "Kumbaya," right?
Yeah.
Um, you could have solved the Israeli-Palestinian conflict
Seriously,
right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And it's a little kind of a cheesy anecdote, but
No,
it
it's yeah.
is reflective of how you're only going to find the supposed anti-Semitism if you actually go and seek it out or try to instigate it for social media clout, right?
Yeah.
Um, because I still haven't heard of one incident where there was any animosity directed at Jews, qua Jews, so
Right, Jews for
Jews
being
who are
Jewish.
being Jewish, right?
Right.
No, it's Jews who are going to try to advance a certain political cause that people object to, and then when people object to it, that gets then twisted as anti-Semitic. I mean, we know the whole routine, right?
Right.
And then I also went to Colombia on the night of the NYPD raid, which was bizarre to watch. I was right on, like the police were kind of rushing us off the sidewalk, but I was there as this like dystopian NYPD vehicle that I doubt they've used for anything in like however many years they've had it in storage. They bring it out, and then they have these lines of cops going into the building, and it was just a crazy scene. And then the best part was like one of the NYPD top chiefs the following morning was saying that they had determined that the Columbia, occupation of the library was the biggest public safety threat to have faced New York City in many years. So, are you kidding me? College
Right.
girls being frog marched down the street, Ivy League college girls being frog marched down the street, the most, unintimidating people you could possibly imagine. They have to get, twisted into this like dire threat. It's absurd. I mean, if you actually feel threatened by college girls chanting "Free Palestine," then you have a problem. Claim that they're intimidated or threatened by the anti-Semitism on display. But the point is, like, I didn't encounter. I would have reported. I actually would have
Yeah.
if I had encountered anything that could be remotely construed as anti-Semitic. Because shortly after October 7th, like I said, I was in England and the UK around that time, and I did go to a pro-Palestine protest in
Mhm.
Birmingham, which has the biggest, very heavy Muslim population in the UK, and I was just doing what I would do at any public political gathering, which I was going, just kind of talking to people, politely, but questioning their views, probing their views, not being antagonistic or particularly adversarial, but just talking.
Yeah.
And there was one instance where I did get kind of like confronted and basically like these Muslim youths thought that they were tough guys and were trying to intimidate me or asking, are you Israeli, are you Jewish? Now
Yeah.
it wasn't the biggest deal in the world, like it wasn't like something that I would run around with my hair on fire about, but like you could potentially reasonably like classify that as something to do with like anti-Semitism or being Jewish. Now I think it would be ridiculous to exaggerate the significance of it, but like, it was at
Right.
least something, right? But like, on U.S. college
Yeah.
campus,
There's not. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking the Upper West Side of New York
Yeah.
City, really? New
Right.
York Times liberal Jew Central is now this hotbed of anti-Semitism. Cambridge, Massachusetts,
Yeah.
Princeton, New Jersey. I
With
mean, you
all
gotta
these
be
Jews
kidding me.
there too, Jews
Right.
protesting.
And they're all Jews. You know this. The problem is that you have a lot of instigators and like social media clout chasers, including a one girl that I happened upon at Colombia, who just go and they want to foment some kind of incident, which then is going to get immediately like rocketed through this whole social media, you know, ecosystem
Right.
and uncritically repeated as an instance of anti-Semitism, and the ADL will put it on their tally,
Right.
right? And I happened to upon this woman who was like standing at the gates of the Columbia, like on the perimeter, on the sidewalk, taking video of herself. Of course, she had the big garish Star of David necklace, which she like was just hoping was someone who's gonna get angry by.
Right.
Um, which good for her, I guess. But she was like just on video claiming that Jews. I just overheard her telling whoever she was live streaming to, that Jews were being blocked from the Columbia campus. So she was effectively accusing the new NYPD and the Columbia Security Force of being rabid anti-Semites and just capriciously blocking Jews from entering the campus. Now, what she didn't say was that everybody without a Columbia ID at that point was being blocked from the campus. I couldn't
Right.
get nobody could. Even there were even like girls who like have like Columbia IDs like from the medical uh, building
Cool.
or whatever, who were not being allowed on the main campus because they had that clamped down.
Right.
But she was trying to, of course, twist it into some kind of self-victimization, self-pitying narrative that they could then claim was another example of the rampant anti-Semitism, and then use that as a basis to agitate for police intervention, which they eventually succeeded in doing
Right. So
at Columbia anyway. But yeah, there was just nothing. And again, look, I would have genuinely reported it if I had encountered it because
yeah.
it's a big country. There's lots of crimes out there. Of course, it's possible that there's like the one guy who's going to be a whack job who might say something anti-Semitic. I mean, you never know.
Right.
Not that it necessarily would have been representative of the protest movement, but like even if it just
Yeah.
happened that it was an aberration, I would have reported on it. But it was just nothing.
It's definitely being weaponized. Like if you have one random person saying something, which you didn't see, but like if you do have one random person saying something, it's so cynical and obvious that this is being used to shield Israel and to divert attention away from what's happening in Gaza.
Yeah, or it's not even to shield Israel, really. It's to create this hysteria,
Yeah.
which then can be. I mean, maybe it is to shield Israel ultimately. It is to shield Israel ultimately, but
Right.
it's also to create this like domestic political panic.
Yeah.
Which why the Republicans. I mean, one of the most amazing thing going back to how Republicans differ from Democrats in terms of how they handle the Israel issue. The House Republicans, led by Speaker Mike Johnson, evangelical Christian, loves him some John Hagee. He just gave a blessing to the unveiling of a statue of Billy Graham in statuary last week at the U.S. Capitol. That's who Mike Johnson is. Says that we have a biblical imperatives to support Israel. Before the passage of the National Security Supplemental Bill, he was going around on conservative media saying, number one, Trump has given his endorsement to the Ukraine funding, so that neutralized opposition from Republicans to that, but also that it says in Genesis that we support Israel. Really, the book of Genesis. But he strode triumphantly onto the Columbia campus. Remember that?
Right. Yeah.
Talked
about the Holocaust and experiments done on Jews. Yeah.
And he in addition to his leaders, colleagues in Republican leadership, so Stefanik, who's auditioning for Trump's VP, and Scalise and Tom Emmer and these other people, um, Mike Johnson announced that he has instituted a whole, what they call a whole of House initiative in the House of Representatives, where for the remainder of this congressional term, at least up until the November election, so they got the $100 billion war funding bill passed thanks to Trump hoaxing his own supporters and orchestrating that passage of that. I'll have a big piece on that coming out soon, so that's all going to be in the record.
Oh, great.
And because I'm annoyed by everything, but that really got me. But Mike Johnson said that for the remainder of the congressional term, House Republicans' resources will be devoted singularly to apparently what is the number one issue for Americans, and so nothing to do with their economic security, healthcare, jobs, nothing. The number one issue for Americans, according to the House Republican Conference, is anti-Semitism on college campuses. So there's going to have so from now until November, it's going to be a constant deluge of these endless hearings where they're going to repeat the same crap over and over again. I mean, they had last week, they trotted out this Harvard Divinity School student. His name is Shabos. That's his first name. He's like he's a first generation or second generation from Poland or something, which, whatever. And he was claiming how, he's just going on this whole spiel about how he was literally physically endangered by the existence of these encampments at Harvard in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Probably like one of the safest places for Jews that has literally ever existed on Earth. So because Republicans figure that they can try to box in Democrats and box in Biden by constantly repeating this nonsense that Biden is like pandering to the pro-Hamas wing of the Democratic Party, which is, of course, like always three people. It's always Rashida Tlaib, Omar, and maybe like one or two others, Jamal Bowman or something. I mean, AOC, I don't even know how they can make their argument for her. She goes around accusing Joe Biden of being complicit in genocide, and then takes like cool
Selfies with them. Yeah. Right.
I don't even know how that she would be included in that. But the point is, Republicans think they have a line that they could use as this principal attack against Democrats. Trump signs on to this.
Yeah.
He says, "You ain't Jewish." I'm not that quote exactly. Remember how Biden said, "You ain't black."
You ain't black if you don't vote for me. Yeah. Yeah.
Trump is saying the equivalent now. You ain't Jewish if you don't vote for.
Right. He has said that very explicitly. By the way, I feel like I have to show this community note that was written about you after you wore the Star of David. Someone wrote, Michael Tracey is not Jewish, as inferred by his use of a Jewish religious item. Anti-Semitism specifically denotes hatred against Jews. Obviously, as the
First of
person
all, incorrect use of the word inferred. Not that that's the worst offense in that community, which I still think is a kind of ridiculous system. I mean, sometimes it can be a funny outcome when a note gets attached to something.
They meant implied, or they meant to say as one would infer by, but yes.
So my question is, so let's say I was barraged with anti-Semitic vitriol on account of my wearing the kippah and the Star of David. Would that not have been anti-Semitism?
Of course, all the people criticizing you as being fake would use that as evidence of anti-Semitism.